This episode of An Abundance of Naught is brought to you by Amazon.com. Amazon affiliated with us. We're very happy about it. Please go to anabundanceofnaught.com, click on the Amazon banner, and do all your shopping as normal. Bookmark for ease of use. We appreciate it.
And TLDRgamer.com. When you don't have a whole lot of time to read the gaming news and just want the brief excerpts, visit TLDRgamer.com for the core info. Thank you to them for the hosting and bandwidth for our podcast. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome in. It's an Abundance of Naught for May the 28th. It is a Wednesday, so Wade is happy as it's his
It is a Wednesday. It's always a Wednesday. Wednesdays
it
are
is.
an awesome day.
Obviously, Brad and Wade are here with me.
Especially when it's your Friday, which is mine.
Yeah,
You know?
Shut up about it.
Wow, somebody's in an awesome mood.
You'd think I'd be in a good mood for a 3-day work week, but I am beat. I'm tired.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, you're not. You don't care. You don't care about me.
Not really.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about stuff we do care about. How was everyone's, well, Wade didn't have a long weekend. So, Brad, how was your long weekend?
My long weekend was awesome.
Yeah, do share.
We got the pool open, finally. And a whole bunch of kids from the neighborhood came over and started playing with our kids again. You know, the whole start of summer routine. It was really good. Barbecue out. What else? Went to a baseball game.
Ooh.
Yeah, we have a single A league team in our town. So we went and saw them play, and the game ended with fireworks and, you know, for Memorial Day and everything. So it was a good weekend. Did some yard work. All of that good jazz.
All that homeownerly type stuff.
Yeah, you know, the stuff that we need to do.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, I took the daughter out to see my dad, who lives out at the California-Arizona border on the river. We went out there Friday night, stayed out there Saturday, Sunday, came back Monday morning. He had to go into work. My daughter kneeboarded for the first time. For those of you who don't know, it's like wakeboarding, but on your knees. And did quite well for someone who has never done it before, and considering that she's only 8. So, pretty impressed with that. We collectively went and saw X-Men on Monday, so we'll talk about that in a little bit.
In the movies.
My daughter also auditioned for a choir chorus group up at one of the local colleges. They have a youth program going on, or they do every year from September to roughly May. So she auditioned and got into that, so that starts in September. Although I'd like to see her do more solo and more limelight stuff, this could be at least a good step for her. So,
Yep.
Excited to see how that plays out.
Got to start somewhere.
Correct. What else? Took the GoPro out to the river, so I got some fun footage there. Oh, excuse me.
He's tired.
Like I said, I'm tired. These 3-day work weeks, they're gonna kill me.
Yes. Do explain that, Mr. Worn Out.
Yeah, I took yesterday off, so I ran a bunch of errands yesterday, so I wouldn't have to do it today. And including going up and taking my daughter up to the audition. So, but yeah, actually had to work today for the first time in 4 days or 5 days, and it sucked. But yeah, Dad found out he's got an issue with his Sea-Doo. It's leaking oil somewhere after spending almost $400 on a service, so he's a little bummed about that. You talked about sports. I was watching the University of Washington against the Florida Gators girls softball game 2 of 3 Sunday morning.
Oh, was that what's on? I saw that on the TVs at the bar.
Yep, so that was playing and the University of Washington was down by a game, so they had to win the game I was watching, which they did by, I think, a run to go into the pretty much sudden death later in that afternoon, and then they lost 8-0. So, not a good finish for the girls of University of Washington, but oh well, someone has to lose. But
yes, that does happen in sports.
It does. It does. Not everyone can be winners.
That's right. Contrary to what some people may try and tell you.
What's that?
I said contrary to what some people may try and tell you.
Yeah, like the coaches of your boys' soccer system.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, aside from that, that's about a wrap up of my weekend. Wade, did you want to add anything, share anything from either your weekend or anything you did Saturday, Sunday, Monday?
Well, considering you were gone, my weekend actually felt like a 4-day. I mean, it was very quiet.
You're welcome.
Without us bickering, I'm pretty sure both us, well, me and our mother was enjoying the calm quietness of the apartment / home.
Silence is golden.
Yeah, it was quite wonderful. But, still another quiet weekend. Just was just doing a lot of recording for the channels. So
awesome. Content to come.
Yeah, kind of if you haven't realized, I was having a bit of kind of issue with my mic. It had a kind of instant echo, which I had to jump into the settings to figure out if anyone is having a problem with their USB Yetis. I'd be glad to help you out there.
And that we do realize that happened on last week's podcast at the very end, so we're sorry about that, but luckily it was at the end and not all the way through, so consider yourself lucky.
So, in longer terms, just get ready for better voice quality on my videos.
Awesome.
Hooray. Well, with that, should we get into some movies?
Let's do it.
All right, movie time. My almost favorite time of the podcast. So
almost favorite time. Apart from it ending?
I mean, I'd love all of it, but I enjoy the movies. I'm going to start doing something a little more fun with the movies, or maybe just more informative. We always kind of throw out a little bit of the budget that a movie has, and usually it's kind of a one-off thing. I'm going to start trying to include what the movie's budget was in regards to when they are either coming out or how they're doing in the box office. So that being said, movies that are coming out this week, highly anticipated Maleficent with Angelina Jolie and Elle Fanning. That's only got a 67% critic rating, but it's got a budget of $180 million. So hopefully they're able to, and I don't see them having any issues. A lot of people are looking forward to seeing this regardless of what the critics say. Also coming out is A Million Ways to Die in the West. This is the comedy, although it's got some decent names in it. It's got Liam Neeson, Charlize Theron. You got, is it Seth MacFarlane? I think he's the primary in it. You've also got Giovanni Ribisi and Sarah Silverman. So that could be really, really funny and definitely an adult movie there. In the box office, X-Men destroys it as Godzilla did last week. It pulls in $90.8 million against its $200 million budget. Godzilla pulls in another $30.9 million on top of the 90 from last weekend against its budget of $160 million. And pulling in third is Blended. This is the Adam Sandler movie at 14.3, and Neighbors pulling in fourth at 14.0. We have no honorable mentions this week, as Blended and X-Men were the premiere movies to be released.
The interesting thing about Blended, it brought in just over $14 million on a budget of $40. It's not doing well.
I hear that it was Adam Sandler's worst opening of all of his movies.
Well, when you go up against something like X-Men that's got so many big names in it, I mean, you've got the core cast from the original trilogy, and then you've got the core cast from the First Class movie. I mean, there's some sufficient names in there And to take an Adam Sandler, Drew Barrymore comedy and put it up against something like that, I'm not saying it's a good movie or a bad movie as far as blended, but you got to be at least realistic of what you're going against.
Yep.
Wrong timing, I guess.
Yep.
I mean, heck, it was great watching Gandalf and the captain of the Starship Enterprise work together.
Again. So with that being said, Wade, why don't you give us a little bit more on your take of X-Men, thoughts, likes, dislikes, etc.
It was really interesting how they used the Sentinels this one. Because if we remember in the first cartoon, the Sentinels were basically the minions for Magneto, but were creations from a company that was being funded by the U.S. government against Magneto. Of course, then he well, actually, I don't want to say anything else about that. We have to separate the spoiler.
Don't give it all away.
That's right.
Cut myself. Whew.
It's actually kind of interesting because in previous movies, they did have the character Trask, who was played in this movie by Peter Dinklage, who is no secret. He is the creator of the Sentinel program. But there was another actor that played Trask who was, I believe, an African-American actor in one of the previous X-Men movies. But it's kind of a one-liner. It kind of gets, he's addressed and then they move on. We see Stryker again in this movie, who was also in the X-Men Origins Wolverine and also X-Men 2, but this is now the third actor to represent that character. There's a lot of buzz online about the continuity errors in the X-Men franchise as a whole. I know for me, a few just basic ones is that at the end of the Origin, the first Wolverine exclusive movie, X-Men Origins Wolverine, Patrick Stewart is standing outside of the facility with the helicopter to pick up the mutants that Wolverine has freed. So he's able to walk in this universe that they showed. But in the X-Men First Class movie with Jennifer Lawrence and the younger versions of them all, he takes a bullet to the spinal cord and is unable to walk at a young age. So you had a continuity issue there. There's a big continuity storyline issue with Mystique between previous movies and this movie. There's a continuity issue from the Wolverine movie to this movie. And there's a lot of other ones that are floating around the internet. But a lot of people, including myself, although we kind of picked up on them and we're kind of scratching our heads here and there, I don't think it took too much away from the movie. It was still a very enjoyable movie. It was still very well done. You're going for an X-Men movie and you're going to get an X-Men movie. A few things may not line up totally and completely with previous movies, but that's okay. I mean, it was still a real good experience. The critics loved it. I mean, I think it got 90% rating if I look back at last week's notes. So if you haven't gone out there yet, I still recommend doing so.
The one thing I couldn't figure out was Ellen Page's character, Shadowcat, who has the power to go through walls, all of a sudden somehow had the ability to send someone's mind back in time.
Yeah. And there was no explanation for that, so that was kind of strange.
And it's a new mutant ability.
What's that?
She mutated between movies.
Yeah. I mean, she still utilizes her going through walls and stuff, and I don't know if they're trying to say that, going through walls is also a manipulation of time, but I'm not... They didn't really explain it. She just, I have this ability, and that was kind of the end of it.
Yeah, it wasn't really explained, which kind of was like, wait, how are you doing this?
Yep.
So, but yeah, a lot of continuity issues. I mean, if you're really not thinking about them, you won't notice them. And maybe Jean Grey was just making Professor Xavier float just at ground level.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not paying super attention or don't recall the previous movies to their minute details, you'll very much enjoy it. If you do really pay attention to previous movies, you'll still enjoy it, but you may have questions after the fact. So
how about you?
Yeah, and I don't remember it to that level of detail.
How about you,
I
Mr. Brad?
enjoyed some of the previous X-Men ones, but I wasn't a diehard fan, so it was,
And I'm the same way. I was never a fan of the comic books. It was when the cartoon came on Saturday mornings, it was always at like 10 or 10:30, and that was the time that was designated to turn the TV off. So I never really got into the show way back as a kid. I have since gone through on Netflix and watched it just to kind of educate myself a little bit in the universe. But that's about the extent of it. But from the movie standpoint, I mean, I do try to pay attention to stuff, and when I do see something that to me is a fairly blatant continuity issue, I do pick it up. I'm not totally oblivious, but some little things that only diehard fans would catch, obviously I would not. So, but that's kind of where I stand on that. And Wade, if you got nothing else, we can jump into some news. All right, Wade signals me to go to news. Here we go.
And we cut live to the news desk.
We do? We have a news desk?
Yes. We have a news desk. Well, we actually have two of them. One on your end and one on mine.
Ours is more of a news couch right now, but that's about to change.
Nice.
Well, it's still a couple months out, but it's in the works.
Awesome. All right, so let's do the news. California is going to set a precedent in starting to license driverless cars.
This is exciting to me.
It's exciting from a technology standpoint, definitely. The Department of Motor Vehicles will begin licenses for select driverless cars and their human co-pilots. It's not going to be that expensive. It's only $150. That covers 10 vehicles and 20 test drivers. They're kind of strict on how they're going to regulate it. Only certain vehicle manufacturers can apply it. They're trying to keep it limited as a test case for right now. You have to have an astronomical amount of insurance. The test driver has to be able to take over control and can't have any blemishes on their record for several years back. So they're tightening. They're making it, it's not going to be a cakewalk to get these, but it's interesting to see them starting to explore this whole driverless car area.
I can't get one, and then tell it to go to the employee parking lot of the airport and take a nap.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But the fact that they're testing this would lead you to believe that in some point in the future, and not too distant future, that's going to be a total possibility.
Because I could totally use that 15 extra minutes of sleep.
Right?
Well, several of the technology divisions of car manufacturers have already come out and said they've got the technology. This is not a problem. They can make it work. It's the people who are not comfortable with it and the laws that are not in place to control how it's used.
Yeah.
This is not a technology problem.
No, I think the biggest issue with technology like this is because you'll have cars on the road that are self-driving, self-navigating, and also having people in the same road, potentially the same lane or adjacent lane, with cars that are not computer-guided. That whenever you have the human element, you have the potential for
chaos, pretty much.
Inconsistencies, I'll say. Whether it's speeding, whether it's not letting a car over that's had their blinker on for 50 feet, whether it's the road rage factor or whatever. So that's the biggest. I think that's the biggest hurdle they're going to have to overcome, is how do you get these cars to interact with outside forces, with other vehicles that aren't computer controlled, that they can't send a signal to and say, hey, I need to change lanes, let me over, things like that.
Maybe these cars just need to come with a warning. A robot car does not play well with others.
Bam! I see this
there's
as
a couple of issues.
I love the movie I, Robot, and that's kind of what the cars were there. They were computer controlled, but could be man controlled, so I like this concept.
To which that was
But
foreign. He's like, Will Smith, I'm taking over control. And the pastor's like, are you insane? Like, as we look to the robot-controlled cars as insane, they look to the human-controlled cars as insane.
Yeah.
Nobody drives anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think the thing was in the movie is that they were able to have the cars move at much faster speeds because they were all governed, or not governed, but controlled with the same criteria that they could operate at faster speeds because you didn't have the human element. And
the computer was making decisions a lot faster.
Yeah. So,
the interesting thing about that, though, is you mentioned the human element. Going to a completely computer-controlled system doesn't eliminate the human element. It's still humans that are programming these. I mean, look at the problems that Toyota had with the accelerators, where it was sticking in software.
Agreed and understood, but there's a difference in a coding deal versus I want to make a turn here and a car won't let me, so how do I now redirect myself around that because this other car wouldn't allow me to take the path I want to take. So then you've got to factor for that criteria.
And I understand that. But I'm just saying that the coding aspect still needs to come into this. That are we ready to turn over control? And that's part of what's holding this back. I'm not saying that as a right or a wrong thing, but are we ready to turn over control to a computer program that is still written by humans and still may have bugs? And we couldn't press the brake and have the car stop. Or are we really ready to turn over complete control to the car?
It's a valid question because I myself really do enjoy driving. I enjoy the experience of driving. It's not a matter of I need to get from here to there, but it's a pleasure. It can be a very pleasurable experience, or it can be a very calming experience. When I had my motorcycle, I would get on and just go ride for 20, 30 minutes and come back in a more peaceful state of mind. It calmed me.
Mm-hmm.
But in a car, you can go from being calm, you can go to being very agitated or be aggressive, depending on inputs from music or whatever. So you've got that whole aspect too. Now, if there were specific roadways that allowed you to be in control safely, again, adopting the concept that computer-controlled cars can operate at faster speeds reliably and safely versus people driving at higher speeds, then maybe that's an option. But
that being said, I just came up on the idea that could kill the performance car market.
Totally.
It's you ever hear, the handling is smooth or this thing, that won't matter anymore.
Correct.
How many high profile car manufacturers are going to try to shoot this down?
That's a valid point. I mean, if you have a computer-controlled car and you're not driving, do you need a performance car? Do you need something that's fast or that handles well? No, you need a Prius. If it's something that's being governed by another entity, a computer entity, how do I say this? There is no control of power. You won't have that kind of power. You won't need that kind of feeling the smoothness of the turns and the suspension and all kind of handling, which means, you could probably cut down on a lot of the car manufacturing, but, you will lose all your high performance cars doing so. It's an interesting concept, for sure.
So let me throw another twist in this. And that is a little bit of a morality one. And I hadn't thought of this before until it was brought up on a podcast that I listened to. And just kind of throw it out there, maybe not so much to comment on, but to think about. So now you have a car that is completely controlled, and we're fast-forwarding, a decade, 2 decades, whatever, and hypothesizing on a potential future, okay?
Agreed.
So the cars on the road are mostly computer-controlled.
Yes.
Now you have a couple guys on a on some motorcycles. One is wearing a helmet and one is not. Now, for whatever reason, water on the road, insert, random event here, the car senses that it is going to lose control and has a choice of trying to correct as best as possible. One possible correction takes it towards the motorcyclist with a helmet, and one possible correction takes it towards the motorcyclist without a helmet. Now, does the car get to decide, well, the motorcyclist with the helmet is better protected and therefore more likely to survive, so we're going to deliberately make a correction that is going to cause an accident with him?
It's interesting. I mean, you being a computer guy, typically the answer would be that the vehicle should take the path that causes or has a higher probability of course correcting the vehicle. But then do you throw in that caveat in there? And who knows what programming and capabilities will be in 20 years? I mean,
sure,
we have no clue. But if you have that aspect, how do you figure that? Or is it in 20 years that certain roads will not be motorcycle accessible for that reason? It'll be computer-controlled cars only from this point forward on this stretch of road, whether that's a freeway, highway, whatever.
I can see that definitely, but even amongst computer-controlled cars, there is the potential, and this is going to be a moral and a legal issue going forward, where there's the potential that the car will be forced to make a programmatic decision that may or may not involve it putting other people's lives at risk.
Yeah, and then who's to blame when that occurs?
Exactly. Is it the driver, what we would now consider the driver of the vehicle, who no longer drives it? Is it the programmer? Is it the car company? I mean, there's a lot of twisted issues wrapped up around this.
This is very true.
Well, there is actually quite an easy way of solving this, is a separate motorcycle lane.
But say you've got a motorcycle lane and then next to it you have a car lane. And you have the car detects it's going to lose control, and you have either, maybe the only means of course correcting is going into a motorcycle lane to re-engage control of the vehicle, and that may cause them to hit a motorcyclist. Who's at fault?
The computer-controlled entity would most likely adjust the car on the other side of the thing, and then allow the other to move over.
So you're saying like the cars will be communicating with itself, and it will, hey, I got an issue, get out of the way, okay, great, and go that way.
Exactly.
I mean, in 20 years it's possible, but the question at hand is, say a computer-controlled car, while being operated by the computer, causes harm to a person. Hurts them, kills them, whatever. And that family, like now, wants compensation for that. Right now, a company would sue the driver of the vehicle, and therefore owner, and then subsequent insurance companies to make sure they get the most for their loss. When it's not a man responsible at the wheel of the vehicle, who do you sue? The owner of the vehicle, who had no input in what the car was doing, the car manufacturer who engineered the system, the guy that programmed the computer that decided to have the car make that decision. Who's at fault here? Who would stand to, be liable for this situation?
And this gets us into a realm that we have not dealt with to date. We have a lot of automated systems. We have automated trains. Planes have autopilot. We have a lot of what could be considered robotically controlled vehicles. But ultimately, at the end of the day, there is always a way for a human to overrule them.
Correct, but a lot of these automated systems don't or are not in an environment where they're interacting with human counterparts.
Yes, agreed.
So you don't have the issue yet that we're hypothesizing about.
Well, and you don't have the close contact. Robot-controlled trains are kept certain distances apart. Robotically controlled planes are kept certain distances apart. And anytime you get into a more densely populated area like an airport, they're under human control. Now we're talking about turning loose, tens of millions of cars on the road in densely packed environments, completely under their own control.
Well, I know Mercedes has been testing computer-controlled systems to where the cars were totally computer-controlled, and maybe it was 3 or 4 of them in a line, and they're able to be tighter packed than human driving counterparts, and still able to react to the actions of the one in front of it, whether it's slowing down, speeding up, that sort of thing, to maintain that distance of separation. And it may only be, 1.5 feet. I mean, we're not talking 6 feet here. We're talking right on top of each other. But
agreed.
They're
and
able
the computer
to
has
get
the
data
ability to
and,
do that
and interpret the data easily. You throw a human car in there, all bets are off.
Exactly.
And that's the, like I said, that's the issue I see them having a problem with, is being able to program and react to a non-computer car sharing the same roadway.
And these, this is why we can't. Technologically, we are at the place, like you said, Mercedes has experimented with it. There have been several car companies that have come out and said, yeah, we can do this. We can do this today.
Yeah, but the issue is
But we're not ready for it. We don't have the framework in place to handle this.
Yeah, we don't have the infrastructure as far as roadways. I mean, if you had a designated computer car lane that was only computer cars, then great. And if it had access to the off-ramps without having to interact with other cars, then great. But now you're talking about having to either totally build new infrastructure, whether it's off-ramps, lanes, etc., in order to make that work. And like you said, we're not there.
Nope, not even close.
Well, I'm going to stick in California here. I want to bring the vibe down a little bit, only because this is definitely worth mentioning, and we here are deeply sorry for the losses involved in the UC Santa Barbara shooting, massacre, slaughter, whatever you want to call it, of Friday night. For those who aren't aware, the shooter, and Elliot Rogers, who we now are understanding had his issues with mental health. They believe he is a high-functioning Asperger's, which is a form of autism. His father actually was, I believe, an assistant director for one of the Hunger Games movies, but this guy was totally twisted. I mean, he had a 140-page manifesto. He had multiple YouTube videos blaming women or society for the life that he was living because women weren't attracted to him, or people were given better opportunities than he was. And he opened fire on UC Santa Barbara students. Now, he didn't go to Santa Barbara. He went to a community college, but he shot 2 girls out front of their sorority house. He killed a young man who happened to be in a convenience store, and 3 other people. And I believe on top of that, or maybe including, I'm not sure, but he had 3 people that were stabbed to death in his apartment, 2 of which I believe were roommates and 1 a friend of theirs. Before finally, I don't want to say finally, that's kind of harsh, but ultimately putting the gun to himself. But they found something like ridiculous amount of ammunition in the car he was driving. And like I said, the kid didn't have a bad life. He was the son of a director. He drove a nice BMW, but he had demons, and unfortunately some pretty bad stuff came out of it.
Okay, but I feel like saying he had demons, which obviously he was mentally not all there. I mean, this is just sad and sick, but this goes so much deeper and is so much worse. You know, his whole thing that he's doing this because he couldn't get a date. Really?
That was a key factor, yeah.
This is just sad. There is nothing anywhere that says anybody owes you a date with anyone.
Yep, but he felt that women, were choosing a certain type of guy. He couldn't understand why. He couldn't understand why he wasn't good enough for them. And in one of his videos, he says something along the lines of, "If I can't have you, then I'll destroy you." With almost a grin on his face. He's twisted. People talked about in interviews after the case saying that if everyone was together at a party, he would just be standing there quiet, kind of empty, just looking around at people, surveying, but not ever really getting involved. And a lot of people will blame that on the Asperger's, which is, again, a form of autism, but usually causes people to have issues in social situations or in crowds. But you can't blame society when you have a coping issue with being around people. So people said he looked dead, like from in his eyes, they were very, very hollow, like he was dead inside, just no emotion. And even though he had issues with the mental health, for some reason doing background checks for firearms, all the firearms he acquired legally, but people are going to want to point back to the gun situation. One of the fathers of the victims blames the NRA and politicians for the reason his son died. A lot of pieces to this.
I saw one of his videos, and he was talking.
Go ahead, Wade.
I will be the destruction of your destruction. It's my retribution. It's like, okay, yeah, I understand that you have some problems, but really? You're hyping yourself up this much?
Well, and he sent his manifesto to his parents, I guess. He posted a video online and shared it with people. It's not like he was hiding this.
This was the one I was seeing.
But when the parents or family members saw this and called the cops, I don't know if it was a delay of when he posted it to when people saw it, but by the time cops were involved, issues were already occurring in terms of the shootings and whatnot. So
I think the cops were actually called, and they did a evaluation. They determined that there was really nothing.
Yeah, they questioned him, and they said that he seemed very polite and respectful. He was aware and alert in terms of the conversations and whatnot. But even he had said in one of his videos that had the cops, and this is a day or a week or so prior to the events of last week, but even he had expressed that if the cops would have actually done a search, they would have seen his manifesto, would have seen his guns and the stockpile of ammunition that he had, and this all could have been stopped back then. Not that it's the cops' fault for not doing more due diligence. I mean, you can only go based on the information you have at hand, but
technically you wouldn't need a warrant for that, wouldn't you?
Unless you had probable cause. And that's the deal.
It wasn't offering.
Yeah, if there wasn't any for them to go off of, then they would need a warrant. Then they'd have to question, why do they need a warrant? What was the cue for that? So,
there's a couple issues at play here, though. First of all, there's this sickening sense of entitlement that society has, that we are entitled to anything from anyone.
Yes, we deserve it because we are who we are, period.
Because we are whatever, because we are men, because we are women, because we are white, because we are black, we deserve.
Correct.
And this whole sense of entitlement is gotten out of hand, and then the subtext, the subcontext to this. And after these events, my wife and I were talking, and as guys, we really don't understand everything at play here. This whole incident speaks to a underlying, very sick. I'm trying to form it here. A sickness in our mentality as a society towards women, where everything is their fault. Well, it's your fault your skirt was too short or your blouse was too low. No, dude, take responsibility for your own actions. You're just a jerk.
We have definitely had a shift. And I don't know when it really occurred, but I'm gonna sound like a dick for saying this. I really am, and I apologize because it's not really how I mean it. But the shift really came when women started working during World War II, because there were no men in the workplace, and women had to step up and take on that role to keep the economy and the country rolling, which I'm not bashing at any means. And when women were able to vote, which, not that I'm saying women are not equal, but it definitely brought them to a level of more equality. But the shift I'm more talking about is in the mindsets of men. At one point, and somewhere in the masculine group, we were the ones that had the power. We were the ones that made the decisions, and those decisions were just then followed. If we saw a girl we liked at the bar, we made the decision if they were, more or less coming home with us or not. And again, I don't know where the shift happened, but at least the shift mentally is that now women are in control. If I want to go flirt with a girl at the bar, I can do everything I can to try to convince her to come home with me, but she's the one that ultimately makes that decision now. And we've put women on such a pedestal and taken us off of the pedestal we were on, to the point that now we're looking up and we're holding women in their decision making at such high regard that you get situations like this where someone's life is so horrible in their own eyes to take aggressive actions and result.
So I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay, great.
Okay,
I love it.
No, he actually legitimately does.
I think the case is that we have tried to establish more equality. I don't think it's a case of holding women up on a pedestal. They have the right to determine what they do and don't do with themselves. They have the right to decide if they want to go home with you or not.
And I'm not saying they don't or shouldn't have that right. But I'm saying that we as men and as a society almost give them all of the right without taking, like you said, taking any responsibility for the action. In this case, maybe with Elliot Rogers, he's expecting women to come up to him and interact and provoke whatever. I'm the son of a director. You women should be flocking towards me. And that didn't happen. And then he wasn't taking any actions to interact with them on his own. He wasn't taking the first step, and so now it's their fault. But as
example. I understand it, he was taking actions and he was getting turned down, and so that was their fault because they owed him.
And that's
that's where the danger comes in. Yep. They don't owe you anything.
Agreed.
You don't have a right to a girlfriend. You don't even have a right to a friend. If you want friends, then be a friend.
Agreed.
And this whole mentality that, they shouldn't have the right to decide whether to go home with you or not, or they, that they owe you anything is just sickening.
I agree. And again, I wanted just to make sure it's clear that I'm not saying women shouldn't have the right one way or another, but I think we as men have given up our right and have given all of that decision making or authority or whatever to the women and not kept any for ourselves, that the men that do or are maybe more successful with women are the ones that just don't care and are perceived as maybe more of trying to think of a word that's not that would be more appropriate for this podcast, but are less concerned with the consequences. And I think a lot of men these days are overly concerned with, well, what if it goes wrong, or what if this, that, and not taking, like you said, not taking any responsibility. And I'm not trying to sound like a sexist. That's definitely not my views as far as men should have the power and women should just follow. I don't agree with that statement at all. But I think there's definitely a shift in society, like you said, that men think that they deserve it because they're men. And to a point, we no longer take the responsibility of the results because we've maybe have put women on too high of a pedestal and in our minds have given them too much decision power.
No, men have always felt like they deserve it. Men have always felt like they should just take it. This is not a new thing.
That's true.
This is not new. But, when you go to a bar, you don't have to worry about having your drink drugged if you leave it.
True.
You don't have to worry about, if you go home with a new girl that you just met, are you going to survive it?
I don't know. There's been some stories on the news that may make you question.
I was sort of like, that's questionable.
Okay. No, I agree. There are some, but it's not near as prevalent, and I'm sure it's not constantly on your mind.
Agreed.
Whereas this is the reality. If they are engaging people, they have to be constantly on guard. Don't go into dark places alone. You and I don't worry about that.
Yeah, agreed.
We haven't given up anything except maybe we are not near as tough as we think we are. And the fact that they, have the authority to assert themselves makes us feel somehow threatened, which is just stupid. They have the right to say no, and we as men should respect that. And you get sickos like this guy who just don't care and think they are entitled to everything, including women, including sex, including girlfriends, including whatever the heck they want. No.
And it takes a special kind of someone to not only feel that they're so far entitled that punishments need to be dished out when they're not getting what they want, and also to the point of taking such drastic actions. And now I don't know if in his manifesto he was planning on, ultimately taking his own life, or that was just kind of well, I've come down this far and maybe he came to a realization that I've done all these things now and there's no way really to get out of this. Or was he truly oblivious to the fact that if he did all these things, there would be no consequences? So it takes a special kind of someone. If it's the latter, it takes a special kind of stupid to think you can go and open fire in public and potentially or purposefully killing people and think that nothing's going to happen to you. Because there are special kinds of crazy that do think that way.
Oh, and I would just, kind of wrap up my point here. I would end with, you and I don't have to worry about when we go out in public, are our, shorts too short? We've got a muscle shirt on, are we showing too much? And unfortunately, this is the reality that we, as men, have created, that we blame the victims. A girl gets raped, and if her skirt had been a little longer, you can't blame the guy.
Well,
no,
that's
BS. Own your crap.
Yeah, I definitely, I'm on the same page as you. It's never, could women dress in a way that they were less provocative? Sure. Does a girl wearing a short skirt look in the mirror and think, maybe this is a bad idea and I shouldn't do this? Or they think, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyway? That may go through their mind.
But it only goes through their mind because we've made it go through their mind. It shouldn't matter if they walk around naked. It shouldn't matter. You control yourself.
Sure.
It may cause inappropriate thoughts. Granted, that's going to happen. But as far as you ever physically laying a hand unwanted on anyone, it shouldn't matter if they're walking down Main Street completely naked. Control yourself.
Yeah. I agree.
And,
this whole mentality that it's their fault for how they dress is just BS.
And on that point, if a female is getting, attacked, the attacker is most likely has already been infatuated with that particular female for an extended period of time. It's just not that one night. Sure, there are cases of that, but most of the time it's that person or that male has been infatuated with this female for an extended period of time. So, nevertheless, yeah, we're not all entitled to everything. I believe you have to work to earn what you have.
And, if you want a date, you want a girlfriend, show that you're worth it.
Agreed.
You'll get it.
And that's the work I was referring to.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. And, something that my wife is fond of saying, and I think holds true for most things, is if you're doing the same thing over and over and over and getting the same results and it's not the results you want, like this guy, trying to date over and over and over, and no girl will say yes. It's all the women's problem, right? No, the common link here is you.
Yep. Definition of insanity.
Obviously, you're the problem. Yep.
If the method doesn't get you to the result that you want, then change your method.
I remember
exactly
the first day I started working at Ruby's, one of the cooks said to one of the waitresses, "Do not question my methods." I said, "Methods should always be questioned. It's how they improve. If something isn't working, you have to change it to make it work."
Cool story.
Well, not really.
Yeah, no, not really. Not at all. That was sarcasm, dripping, oozing out of my mouth.
But I just want it to be clear that treating any woman this way, treating anyone this way, man or woman, is never right. It's never okay.
So here's my final question on this subject, and we're getting a little long. Maybe we have a long podcast this week. Why not? Could this have been prevented? And if the answer is yes, how? If the answer is no, why not?
I think the answer is probably yes. We will never know for certain. But probably yes. But it takes a paradigm shift in society to recognize that women are not objects, are not property, are not things to be owned and bartered and,
don't
taken
you go to
lightly.
Nigeria for that? Isn't that where that's happening?
Yeah, we're supposed to be civilized, and we're not. Routinely, we as society, in the general sense, engage in what amounts to kidnapping and rape because we feel like we can, because we feel entitled, because she owes me, because, this, again, it's the whole sense of entitlement. Could it have been prevented? Probably, with a paradigm shift of us teaching our children, which means we would have to have backed up, previous generation. So his parents would have needed to teach him that you are not entitled to anything.
And you would think
this
with
girl
father,
doesn't owe you.
You would think with a father who has worked his way to be an assistant director, and I think now doing his own directing work, would have been able to express the value of work and the results that it can get you. And not just that, well, you're my son, so here. Now, maybe he was the type of father, and I know that he did take, this being the father, did take his son to premiere nights of Hunger Games and things like that. So maybe the father was one who taught entitlement because, hey, you're my son and look what you get to do because you're my son. And I put the work in so you don't have to. But we'll never know. I mean, that's all speculation.
But even if you want to do that materialistically, if you want to spoil your children and give them everything and not make them work, you should still stress that people have a right to self-determination. And if this guy or this girl doesn't want to hang out with you, they actually don't have to.
Correct.
Get over yourself.
There is still technically a way you can do that. So you can, give the kid, a lot of things, but you can also stress that says, look, this is what I've had to do to be able to do this.
Yeah, to be able to provide this for you, to be able to allow you to experience X, Y, and Z.
I didn't wake up one morning, snap my fingers, and it all came, falling down on my head. I had to work, and if you want what I have like this, when you leave this house, you will have to do the same. It becomes down to that working and earning things.
Yep, agreed.
But again, it comes with stressing people are not material.
Yep.
You can have material things, you can buy material things. Friends have to be
jointly responsible, mutual understanding.
Friendship has to be jointly created.
Yep.
You can't earn it through money or buy it through money. You can't earn it through, physical labor. You can't. It's not something to be bartered or traded. It's something that's mutually created between two individuals, and if the other individual isn't interested, you don't have a friendship. Move on.
Correct. Well, speaking of moving on...
But this whole pulling guns and shooting people because this person won't talk to you, really? That's just sad, and it's a sad testament to what men specifically stoop to. Yes, there are some women who shoot, but that's typically a guy's thing. A girl gets rejected and maybe eats some ice cream and broods for a while and moves on. A guy gets rejected and he shoots?
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think we touched a nerve.
Are we that threatened in our masculinity that we have to take other people's lives to prove our worth?
Honestly, I think that's really what it is too. And a lot of other material that I study that is really more into the dating and even professional life is that men are so afraid now to be men because we've allowed ourselves to be so castrated by society, to be so dependent on the reactions of others for validation and to give us worth when we should be generating our own self-worth, that yes, for a majority of male population, they are afraid to be men. They talk with uptones, they talk with uncertainty, they walk around like they're hiding in shadows, and they're not willing to exist on their terms. They're always trying to fit into the world that's around them as opposed to creating their own. But that can totally lead into a totally different tangent. So I think, Wade, why don't you change our gears for us, shift gears, and let's get into something else.
Okay, well, speaking with something you could do with your friends, we could build a friend relationship with this. Steam, the popular digital game PC distribution service. God, try to say that 3 times fast.
I don't think you can say it 2 times fast.
I couldn't even do it 1 time fast.
I doubt you could do that again.
Yeah. It's finally released their remote play service, and I'm just going to call it Steam Streaming because, well, it's a lot easier, and it's due to 2 different forms of water, so go with that. You're allowed to basically play your games anywhere on any system as long as it's within the in-house connection of your Wi-Fi. So saying if you have your back PC is one with all your games on it, well, you can come up to the front, let's say to your front computer is a Mac, is what you use for entertainment, for, your guest and whatnot. Well, as long as both computers are logged into that same account, you can play a Windows game on a Mac computer. Because technically, it's not the Mac computer that's doing the computing for the game. It's just having it being streamed to it. The game feed is being streamed to the Mac computer in the front.
So Steam is essentially setting up a virtual machine between local computers to access the games on those computers.
Correct.
It sounds like the game is going to run on the Windows, for the example given, on the Windows PC, and just the video data, the actual rendered content, will display on the Mac.
Pretty much, you are playing a game remotely from one
Right.
computer to another. So you can play with basically any OS, whether it be Mac, Linux, or...
It turns your computer into a KVM switch, is all it's doing.
Most people don't know what that is.
Yeah, KVM stands for Keyboard Video Mouse, and it's essentially...
Is that what that is?
Huh?
I said, is that what that is?
Well, you would have no experience with this technology
None at all.
At all, ever. But essentially, it allows you to control a computer from a remote location. Essentially what a KVM is. You can buy single KVM systems from Staples or wherever. Say you have 2 computers in one location. You can have a single keyboard and mouse to control both computers, although only one at a time. You can do it from a distance. Yeah. That's KVM.
So anywho, kind of a cool new Surface Steam has out. Do remember it is in-house Wi-Fi only. You can't go bring one of your computers to your friend's house and still have it work. So,
Which makes sense. I mean, that's going to be a speed issue. It needs the high speed of a local connection to be able to stream this content in such a way that, doesn't look bad.
Yeah, and they're setting it up to make sure that you're not pirating games or say, you're giving your Steam account to your buddy who lives, a city away and they can play a game that they haven't bought yet. So I respect that in terms of protecting the game and the rights and the ownership.
All in all, a really cool service. Really nice, especially for people who may want to game on the couch but don't really want to have to unplug and replug everything back in every time they want to do it.
Yep. Well, it's nice to see technology progressing. I guess that's...
And society regressing, apparently.
Something like that.
We're doing both at the same time.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of entertainment, news out of Netflix. After the success of their original series, House of Cards and Orange is the New Black, Netflix is bidding on a new original series called The Crown, which could cost more than they've paid for the others so far.
Interesting.
They're close to reaching a deal, inside sources say. The new series is supposed to be based around the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, the current Queen of England, and the Commonwealth realms, and details various historical events during her reign. For a reference point, although the full details are not fully known, the rumor is that House of Cards cost $100 million to license for the first 2 seasons.
Interesting. Okay.
So I think this is very promising, actually. It shows Netflix is kind of doubling down on this whole original content feature. They're getting tired of fighting with the studios and distributors over trying to get licensing for all the big name stuff. Okay, fine. We'll just do it ourselves.
Yeah, I'll start doing, like you said, we've seen it with House of Cards. We've seen it with Orange is the New Black. Instead of accessing other data, they're just creating their own and distributing it to their users.
Yeah. So, yay for Netflix.
I agree. And with that, I think to be fair to our listeners and not take up too much more of their time, I think it's probably fair that we ended on the high note of entertainment with Netflix.
Sounds good.
Now you can go watch some Netflix.
Let's go watch some
That's
Netflix.
right.
All right, guys. Thanks very much for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you next time.
Keep on gaming.
That's a wrap.
We here at Abundance of Naught do appreciate you listening in and would also appreciate you sharing us with your friends via the Stitcher Radio app and also iTunes. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and join us at Facebook. Thank you.